Have you ever noticed that no matter how many times you start over, something inside you never seems to change? You tell yourself, if I get a better job, I'll finally be happy. If I move to a new city, everything will feel different. If I find the right relationship, the emptiness will disappear. So you keep chasing the next chapter, a new beginning, a fresh start, a different life. And for a while, it works. The excitement is real. Everything feels lighter. You wake up with hope again. You convince yourself, this was exactly what I needed. Then, weeks pass, months pass, and somehow, the same anxiety returns, the same loneliness, the same dissatisfaction, the same restless feeling that something is still missing. You begin wondering, why does this keep happening to me? Maybe you're asking the wrong question. Maybe the real question is, what if nothing outside was ever the real problem? Human beings are incredibly good at changing the scenery. We change jobs. We move to different cities. We end relationships. We start new ones. We buy new phones, new clothes, new cars. We reinvent ourselves over and over again. Every change carries the same promise. This time, this will finally be different. But have you noticed something strange? Wherever you go, there you are. You can leave your hometown, but you can't leave your mind. You can change your appearance, but you still wake up with the same thoughts. You can build a completely different life and still carry the same fears into it, because the one thing that experiences every chapter has remained exactly the same. Imagine carrying a pair of blue-tinted glasses your entire life. You don't know you're wearing them. To you, the whole world simply looks blue. One day, you move to another country. The streets are different. The language is different. The people are different. Yet the world still looks blue. So you move again. A bigger city, a quieter town, a different continent. Still blue. Eventually, you become convinced that every place in the world has the same color. You never think to remove the glasses, because you've mistaken them for reality itself. Our minds work in much the same way. The beliefs you carry, the fears you repeat, the stories you tell yourself, become the lens through which you experience life. Most people spend years rearranging the scenery without ever questioning the lens. Think about two people standing in exactly the same room. One walks in and immediately notices opportunity. The other notices only problems. One sees possibility. The other sees rejection. One hears criticism and uses it to grow. The other hears the exact same words and feels destroyed. The room didn't change. The conversation didn't change. Reality didn't change. The person experiencing it did. That's why two people can live through the same event and leave with completely different memories. One calls it the best thing that ever happened. The other, the worst. Not because life treated them differently, but because consciousness shaped the experience. There is a pattern almost everyone follows. Something feels wrong. So the search begins. If only I had. If only I earned more. If only I met the right person. If only I escaped this place. Life slowly becomes a series of destinations, always arriving, never arriving. Because the moment one goal is reached, another appears. Like drinking seawater, the more you consume, the thirstier you become. You begin living, not in the present, but in an imaginary future. A future where happiness finally begins. But that day never comes, because the mind simply moves the finish line again. This isn't failure. It doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you've made bad decisions. Changing jobs, ending unhealthy relationships, moving somewhere new, these things can absolutely improve your life, but they cannot replace an inner transformation. They cannot give peace to a mind that has never learned how to be at peace. Because wherever you go, your mind arrives first. For thousands of years, different traditions explored this question. Ancient philosophers, meditation teachers, psychologists, despite coming from different cultures, many arrived at a surprisingly similar insight. The quality of your experience depends less on the world itself and more on the consciousness experiencing it. That doesn't mean the outside world doesn't matter. Of course it does. Real problems exist. Pain exists. Loss exists. But two people can experience the same difficulty, and one grows stronger, while the other becomes imprisoned by it. The difference isn't always the circumstance. Sometimes, it's the way the circumstance is being seen. Imagine watching a dirty window. Outside, there's a beautiful sunrise, but the glass is covered in dust. You could spend all morning trying to move the sun, trying to rearrange the landscape, trying to find a better view. Or, you could clean the window. The world may not change at all, but suddenly, everything looks different. That is what inner change feels like. Life doesn't magically become perfect. Problems don't disappear overnight. People don't suddenly become kinder. But your relationship with everything changes. And once that changes, your entire experience of life begins to change with it. So how do you actually begin? Not by changing your entire life tomorrow. Not by quitting your job. Not by deleting every social media account. Start with something much simpler. The next time you feel frustrated, pause. Instead of immediately asking, "How do I change this situation?" ask a different question. What inside me is creating this experience? Notice your assumptions. Notice the stories your mind instantly creates. Notice how quickly you label people, events, and even yourself. Most of the suffering begins there, not in reality, but in the interpretation of reality. The more you observe, the more space appears between you and your automatic reactions. And in that space, real change becomes possible. Maybe life has never been waiting for the perfect job, the perfect relationship, the perfect city. Maybe life has been waiting for you, not a new version of your circumstances, a new way of seeing them. Because the moment the one looking through your eyes begins to change, the entire world begins to change with them. Not because reality became different, but because the one experiencing reality finally did.